Hello and welcome to the big picture. Kashmir continues to be on the boil. Nearly 2 weeks after a young militant, Burhan Wani, was killed by security forces. The valley has been under curfew for 10 days. After Burhan Wani's death, 40 people have been killed, mostly civilians, and over 3,000 people have been injured, including women and children. It is said that it is one of the worst phases of violence witnessed in the valley for several years. The response of the authorities has been to clamp down on the media, with newspapers not having come out for a second day in succession. All mobile phones of private networks have been shut down, except BSNL postpaid services. Internet is badly disrupted, and generally a sense of despair is visible all over. The violence, however, continues unabated, with stone pelters attacking the security forces. Why has the situation reached this stage? Why the killing of a young militant has resulted in such fierce counterattack? How much of the civilian fury being witnessed is due to assistance and provocation from across the border? How is it that the situation can be brought under control? What is the way forward? We will discuss all this today with Marwah, former advisor to the governor in Jammu and Kashmir, General Raj Kadyan, former deputy chief of army staff, Aman Hingorani, lawyer in the Supreme Court and also an author on a book on Kashmir, Vinod Sharma, political editor, Hindustan Times, and on the phone line from Srinagar is Altaf Hussain, senior journalist. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Hussain, what is the situation today in the valley, in Srinagar and also in the valley?
Well, as you said, it's the 10th day and curfew is in place and tension is there all over the valley. And people have been mostly confined to their homes. And there have been clashes between the security forces and these ordinary civilians who have been protesting against the killing of Burhan Wani and subsequent killing of ordinary civilians in firing by the police and paramilitaries. So it's the 10th day now, and valley has been on the boil.
Okay, Mr. Marwah, you have been there, you have experienced, you know the place, you know the people. Why do you think one young militant being killed? Why this kind of an eruption?
No, it's a very sad situation. There is no doubt that what has happened is very tragic. But I think it's important to understand that killing of Burhan Wani is only a trigger. The problems are more basic and they have been developing for some time. They were for all of them to see that something is going to happen. If not on Burhani's death, something else would have triggered it all. Ultimately, we have to find a political solution to the problem. And political solution is not going to come very easily because it's a very complex problem and there are so many stakeholders all demanding, their demands are conflicting with each other. But we have a situation not exactly like Northern Ireland, but it was there. Northern Ireland also at one time people thought that it can never be solved, but it has been solved. We should start finding a solution. It will take time. But I believe
it has taken more than 25 years.
70 years. What?
No, after the latest.
The problem has been building up from that time.
I'm talking of the post 1990 situation.
And it has been, and we were there at that time in
yes.
1989, 1991, and the problem is soluble. But there is a Pakistan factor, as you mentioned. Pakistan we're not going to allow situation to be easily solved because they keep on fanning it through propaganda, through money, through raising it in international fora. They'll do everything to keep the pot boiling because that helps them in uniting their own political establishment, and it gives the ruling establishment a breathing chance from their own internal problems.
General Kadyan, how much of this is, a result of, Mr. Marwah talks about political process. Everybody talks about political process. We are having a discussion in the debate in the Rajya Sabha today. There also we have heard several voices talking of starting a political process. But the presence of the armed forces there, How much of that has been responsible for this, do you think? Because some people say that has been one of the reasons.
Girish, two basic points first. Number one, before we intend to tackle a problem, we must understand and accept that there is a problem. Even now, there is a little shyness to accept that the J&K people are alienated. I think that needs to be accepted. There is an alienation. Number two, India is not new to problems of separatism. We have had this in Nagaland, Mizoram, where in fact diversity is much more pronounced, not only religion, which is the case in Kashmir, also the culture, the ethnicity, the customs, everything was different. There India has been able to successfully tackle the problem. If J&K is still lingering, it is because of Pakistan. So that factor we cannot ignore and we need to tackle it. Now you mentioned about the security forces. We must understand the problem is multidimensional. Governor Marwah mentioned it is political, it is economic, it is social, it is psychological. Security forces are a containing element. They are not a curing element. They have no cure for it. They will keep containing it. They have contained it for the last 70 years. They will contain it for the next 70, despite the...
Sometimes they contain, sometimes they are not able to contain, like what we are witnessing now.
If contain in the sense that J&K is still part of India, which is wanted to break away, that is the containment. Of course, there will be ups and downs, there will be casualties, there will be flare-ups like it has happened this time. But when I say containment, the status quo is being maintained. No matter what cost the security forces themselves are paying.
AFSPA has been there for 25 years now. And the demand has been, periodically the demand is that it has to be, at least from some areas it has to be removed. But the armed forces doesn't want it to be removed. Why? Don't you think that, if that could be one of the solutions?
Girish, if the situation is normal, you don't require any special laws. When the area is declared disturbed, you have to provide special provisions. No army in the world has ever got involved in civil areas without legal protection. You can't expect a soldier to be sent there without his consent, possibly against his will, and then be told that if you make a mistake, even a genuine, you will be hauled up in a criminal court. I don't think that is possible. AFSPA has to stay if the army has to remain deployed.
Would you like to react to that, Mr. Marwah?
Well, there is a problem because when you make army do the police jobs, you have to give them the protections under the law which have been given to a police officer. So what he has said under this Act, Armed Forces Special Powers Act, not more powers are given to the army which are not already given to the police under the Criminal Procedure Code. The difference is when there is an accusation against a army officer of using force which is not justified, in that case the inquiry should be done and the action should be taken by the army itself. It is not subject to the local laws. And that is
where the problem lies.
That's where the problem lies, and that will continue because, as he has very rightly said, the local criminal justice system is simply not functioning effectively. What has to be in Jammu and Kashmir to realize how the violation of law takes place and no legal action is taken, either in the police stations or in the courts. We had a case where one magistrate in Jammu had issued blank bail bonds. He had signed them without the names.
The blank. And nothing happens.
What can you do?
Ms. Aman?
Yes.
Aman, how do you look at this? Your perception of where the problem lies.
You see, I would pin the blame on the policy of the government of India. I would say that that New Delhi's policy has been misdirected right from 1947 onwards. The simple policy, even today being followed by the government of India, is this is a law and order problem, area clearance, send the armed forces in to contain the problem. That's what's been said by the other speakers. Now, the security forces did not create the Kashmir issue. It does not have the solution for the Kashmir issue. But its mandate is maintain law and order at whatever cost, and that's bound to lead to human rights violations. So we are dealing with a society where violence is endemic from 1990 onwards. where people have psychiatric disorders, and then you inflict violence on them, state violence, this is bound to happen. So according to me, what is happening in the valley right now should be seen in the larger perspective. You cannot de-link it. Kashmir problem is not only the valley, it is beyond the valley. It includes what is happening in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. It includes what is happening in China-occupied Kashmir. And that's why my research of the book basically is that if you want a solution, it has to be a comprehensive solution. And if I may just take 2 minutes to explain what that is when we talk about the way forward. Let me just take 2 minutes on that. We have seemed to have forgotten very conveniently that we are the ones who have internationalized the Kashmir issue. We are the ones who took it to the United Nations Security Council. We are the ones which gave standing to all countries, including Pakistan, to comment on what's happening in Kashmir. We are the ones who said that the accession is conditional. We are the ones who said, which gave a disputed status on this territory. So what we are saying is a terrorist movement, the other countries are saying is a freedom movement. Now, if there is a dispute about title of a house, you create a dispute, what do? You go to a court of law and say, well, this is my house, tell the other person to leave. Similarly, when we have created doubts about our title to the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir, the only way forward is to change the political discourse. And that we can do is by getting a finding from the World Court to say, well, this entire state belongs to India. We have to change the entire political discourse nationally and internationally. And at the same time, bring in CBMs, win the love of the people. Law can't resolve Kashmir issue, but it can set the environment. It can change the political discourse in which you can take proactive steps. So I would say that you have to get into the international stage. This kind of containment is going to just make the problem worse. There's going to be more and more violence in days to come.
Okay, I mean, you have an interesting point of view. Vinod?
I think that it's not the valid point of view. Since 1972, which was the year when we signed the Simla Pact between India and Pakistan, Indian position has been Simla supersedes UN resolutions. Simla makes it clear that Kashmir is a bilateral dispute that has to be resolved bilaterally between India and Pakistan. And that is where the question arises that whether the government can afford a long spell of no talks with Pakistan, because that will give Pakistan an opportunity to go and tell the international community that bilateralism, which was the essence of Shimla, has failed. So there has to be a pretense of talks, so there has to be some process of dialogue with Pakistan on this issue. But more importantly, I think that between two elections in Kashmir, you see, we covered a lot of ground over the past 3 elections, past 18 years or so. 1990s was the worst period, where we had Pakistan preaching us that create a propitious climate for dialogue, and then we can discuss Kashmir with you, contain human rights violations. But we had 3 successive elections, which were relatively fair and transparent, and we covered a lot of ground during those elections. And we got a very valid argument to tell the world that we have had fair elections and people have elected a government which is in place. Now, the problem, Girish, is that between 2 elections, the talking space is left just for the separatists in the valley. The pro-India parties in Kashmir should be proactively talking and engaging with people between 2 elections. National Conference, PDP, Congress. In the valley, at least, they have a strong presence. Also, partly the CPM, which is winning a seat consistently. That dialogue, that engagement has not happened. And in the course of that engagement, you must also tell them
Who is responsible for it?
the pro-India parties, which have been in power there. And this present dispensation too, it has been in power for a considerable period of time now. There has been no political outreach. There has been no pretense of a dialogue, intra-Kashmir dialogue. I'm not talking about dialogue with Pakistan, because that was one of the conditions which was laid down in the agenda of governance of PDP and BJP. If they were to implement their own agenda of governance and have a debate within Valley and other parts of Kashmir on that agenda of governance, I think this problem would not have arisen, because there would have been a sense of participation on the part of the people, and this new age militancy which is there. They are all young people.
That's what-
you have to reintroduce yourself to them. You must tell them that we are serious. And may I tell you one thing? BJP, unfortunately, is not realizing its own strength. BJP is a maximalist on this issue. And if BJP offers even a small concession, it has a major psychological impact on the people of Kashmir. Let's about resolving the issue.
Okay, I think you made important points there. Let me get Mr. Altaf Hussain. How do you look at this? When people talk of a political process, is this what was this what you think will make some progress? What Vinod Sharma says that the pro-India parties have to become proactive.
First of all, let me say, let me take you back to the killing of Burhan Wani, and there was a question why there was such a huge reaction to that killing.
Absolutely.
But we saw it building up. Before that, there was a 3-day firefight between the militants and the security forces in Pampur town, which is near the capital city of Srinagar. And while the militants fought the security forces, ordinary civilians fought the police. They threw stones at the police, and police had to fire tear gas shells and even live ammunition. So we saw, while we have been seeing this militancy has been on the decline for almost a decade now, and there has suddenly been an upsurge, an outpouring of public support for the militants, which was perplexing so many observers. So we have seen, and now this was the culmination, the people coming out in such huge large numbers to protest against the killing of Burhan Wani. How did he become such an icon overnight?
Exactly.
The thing is, to my mind, this is the absence of a political process for so many years. What was initiated by Prime Minister A.B. Vajpayee, that has been abandoned by the Indian state, and there is total absence of a political process. And what has been added to that is insecurities in the minds of an average Kashmiri about his own identity, about the state's identity as a Muslim majority state in Indian Union. So there have been so many things happening, and even the present dispensation has been, by and large, insensitive to that, because after the BJP-PDP coalition came to power, there have been wrong analyses made by so many BJP leaders, like they talked of Sainik colonies, they talked of exclusive townships for migrants who fled the valley and are being brought back. So these things have been instilling fears in the minds of ordinary Kashmiris about their identity. These things have to be addressed, and there has to be a political process. When there's no political process, why is a militant becoming an icon? That means the ordinary people have no faith in the political leadership because no political activity has been happening. Whether it's
that's
the
right.
separatist
Mr.
leadership
Mr.
or
Hussain.
the pro-India leadership, hang a sec. There has been no political activity happening, and ordinary people in Kashmir, particularly the younger generation now, they have lost hope of a political initiative. So that is why they have started looking up to a militant.
So
That's why they came out in such large
Mr.
numbers.
Hussain.
And there's one more aspect to it. These public demonstrations, protests are not a new thing happening in Kashmir. I have seen only, say, 8 years ago, I saw 500,000 people taking to the streets at one time. And even that has not made the state wiser, the establishment wiser, how to deal with such situations so that there are minimum number of casualties.
Okay.
There were people
Mr.
came
Hussain.
out, the state
Mr.
was not
Hussain.
ready, and
Mr.
they simply
Hussain.
killed.
No,
Yes.
Mr. Hussain, sorry. Are we seeing a new generation of leadership of separatists?
I said, or the new generation of people, the young people in Kashmir, they have lost hope in the political process because there is no political process at all. There is no political initiative. Whether it is the pro-India leadership or the anti-India
Hussain.
leadership.
Mr. Hussain, Vinod Sharma wants to ask you a question. Vinod?
Mr. Hussain, what is this slogan of Azadi there? Is it Azadi from India or is it Azadi from both Pakistan and India? Are these third option people wanting an independent Kashmir?
Well, as you know, there is the Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front.
No, but
what is Kashmir's independence from both India and Pakistan, and there are other parties who want merger with Pakistan.
I'm talking about the young
who want to stay with India.
Sir, I am talking about this new phase of militancy in Jammu and Kashmir, in Kashmir Valley. where I want to know whether these people, these new faces of militancy, are they for Azadi for Kashmir or are they pro-Pakistan? Because there has to be some explanation on this. Because if they are not pro-Pakistan and they are only asking for Azadi for themselves from India and Pakistan, then it's an altogether new dimension to the problem.
No, that is beside the point. I with all respect to you, I think that's at the moment irrelevant. The point is what I am trying to drive home. The point I want to make is this: there at one time we had militants in 1,000. There were thousands of militants. Today we have a couple of hundreds of militants. As I said earlier, militancy has been on the decline for almost a decade now. Yet you see such an outpouring of public support for the same militants. Why is it happening? Because the new generation of Kashmiri people have lost they have lost faith in the political process which you have been talking about. There is no political process at all.
Okay,
so
Mr.
Hang a sec. This Burhan Wani represents the frustrations of an ordinary Kashmiri young man, and also at the same time he became a symbol of resistance because they have stopped looking at
Mr. Hussain, your point is well taken.
Or Yasin Malik.
Okay, Mr.
Because they have not been able to deliver in this present situation.
Okay. Yes, Aman.
Yes, I would just simply like to add the point was made earlier that there is alienation in the valley from the Indian Union, and that is people. Whether you call it militancy, but I don't see how can you term entire population as militants. If you have old men, children, whether put in the front as a strategy or otherwise, if you have a whole population taken to the streets, there's something basically wrong in that situation.
Absolutely.
It is not a law order situation. I just want to clarify also what was said earlier. As far as being a lawyer, I must point out a legal flaw in the argument which was just made by Mr. Sharma. Shimla Agreement cannot override the UN Charter. That's the UN Charter itself provides. And that's what the ICJ. If I may just complete, even if you go to the ICJ judgments in the Atlantic case, there's a reference on that particular point which takes precedence. But I'm not on Shimla Agreement overriding anything. Shimla Agreement says resolve Kashmir issue by bilateral talks or any other peaceful means. Reference to the ICJ or another method of resolving is contemplated within the Shimla Agreement. It is not only talks. But I'm not on the issue of UN resolution. I'm not on UN resolution. I'm not on UN Secretary General. I'm not on plebiscite. I'm on the aggression. I'm on the basic issue of Kashmir issue.
Aman, that's okay. We'll proceed further. Mr. You wanted to respond? Yes.
This alienation part, my reading is that there has been a proxy war starting from 1989. All the present youth have been born into that proxy war which is being propped up by Pakistan. So alienation is more in the youth. Burhan Wani had made himself a very popular, a focal point, an icon through a very clever use of media. He had to be eliminated. It is sad that we lost a young life, but beyond that I don't think any tears need to be shed because he was basically a terrorist. He may have been born in India, he was physically an Indian, but all his ideology, the weapon that he was carrying, the word that he spoke, all came from across the border. So the alienation is more...
According to reports, he had never been across the border.
No, he became a rallying point.
He became a rallying point. Yes, Mr. Marwah.
I think you are forgetting the...
No, I want you to address another issue apart from what...
No, I just want to make one...
I'll ask you the question so that you can address both the issues. The fact is that there is a section of people in the government, outside the government, which feels that all this, what is happening in Kashmir, is a result of the cross-border support provocation which is happening. You think that is the approach which should be taken?
That is one of the factors, but it is not the entire story. There is a problem, and we have to accept that. And this problem is not a new one, it is an old one, and it has been growing, and we have not been taking any note of it. There has to be a political process, but that has to be a credible political process, where the youth feel that there is a possibility of finding a solution through a political dialogue. But that has not been happening. Now, as far as the...
General...
Pardon?
What General said, you wanted to respond to it.
No, I've lost the point. What was that?
No, he's talking about...
alienation in the youth who are born into the period of the proxy war. That's what I was trying to tell.
I'll come back.
Anyway, Vinod, the way the response of the state to whatever has happened this time, especially the clampdown on the media, is it necessary? Is this the way to forward? How is it going to help the situation?
But to be fair, it's not the first clampdown on the media. It has been done by previous regimes as well. And at times, I'm not at all in support of censorship or a clampdown on the media, but maybe that, you can negotiate talk to the people from the press and the media and come to some plausible understanding with them. But that, Girish, the big issue here is as follows. That it was pointed out in the debate in the Rajya Sabha also today. There is a full-fledged debate in the Rajya Sabha. Dr. Karan Singh also spoke.
Yes.
And Dr. Karan Singh made a very telling point. He says, listen, like other speakers, that look, there is militancy and there is a civilian population.
Right.
Which may be emotionally attached to some of the militant faces. You have to make a distinction between them. You have to chalk out a strategy as to how to handle the civilian population, how to deal with them, and how to deal with the militancy, maybe in two different silos, which is not possible always. We also at the same time have to be sensitive to the problems our security forces face there. Because, they are airlifted from far away in northeast or somewhere from the south and just plonked there and they have to tackle the situation. But to me, the only solution is, and as was suggested by Dr. Karan Singh, that in the past there have been tentative attempts at setting up a dialogue table with all stakeholders. And Dr. Singh said it should be including the separatist parties that are wanting to go the separate way from India. You have to set up a dialogue table with them. And he said that because in the past the dialogue table was set up, but no follow-up action was taken, that there is a vacuum on the dialogue front. Set up an empowered group which will take that process forward. But for that, the government at the center will have to have a political will, because such an initiative might be in conflict with their own historical background.
The point which I wanted to make was, when you talk of media, we should also take into consideration the role of social media. This is a new thing. The Burhan Wani mobilized his support
through the social media.
You can ban
now what is happening is the clampdown on the newspapers. Yes.
But see, before
social media is a completely new phenomenon.
A new phenomenon, and our system doesn't quite realize its importance.
Raj Kadyan, do the security forces have a plan to deal with the social media, or the government?
No, the plan has to come from the government. The security forces don't control the social media. It is the larger agency that cover. Security forces will implement it if it is required. I think if it is, you see, this Burhan Wani was more of an emotional outburst. I think it has only outlived its shelf life. Most of the casualties, if you notice, are on the first day. After that, it has been on the decline. Yes, the way forward, let me also mention, I am not in favor of taking the matter back to international fora. Yes, talk to Pakistan, let us see if they have a magic formula which they can suggest. They know the red line that the history cannot change, Kashmir cannot break away. Within that, if they can suggest, talk to everybody. I mean, dialogue is a great steam letter.
Okay. Mr. Hussain, very quickly,
yes.
sir.
Yes, we have been talking of the social media and the media in Srinagar.
Yes.
But I am more worried about national media, they have become warmongers. They are not allowing the constituency of peace to grow in India. And that makes the job of the government or the political leadership very, very difficult. I don't want that there should be any curbs on the national media, but they need some counseling, because they have been fomenting trouble in the valley more than anybody else.
Okay, very quickly.
Ghulam Nabi Azad dwelt at considerable length on this issue of the electronic media in his speech, opening speech today in the Rajya Sabha. Though Mr. Arun Jaitley in his response didn't entirely agree with him. But I think there is a problem, and there is perhaps the solution lies again in the government engaging with the media people and informing them and empowering them through sharing information and telling them that you can use a better lexicon to convey the same sentiment.
Okay, I think on that note we completely run out of time, but this is this is something which will need more and more discussion, because what is happening in Kashmir is a matter of great concern. How it will be tackled is not something which can be, a solution can be found so easily. We will wait and watch how the government will respond to it. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time tomorrow.